A very good evening, everyone, and welcome to Leadership Satsang. I'm your leadership coach, Yukti Kapoor Mehendirata. Always super excited for all the Tuesdays because Tuesdays is when we get to meet, when we go deeper in our understanding of leadership and spirituality. And as I've always said, I don't know how to distinguish between the two. I think and strongly believe that spirituality is the essence of leadership. And spirituality means nothing but the reality of who you are, the self. And whichever aspect of leadership you look at, whatever you think you need to develop and master or even use to be able to lead people effectively, you will see that it all starts and ends with you, the self, first. Right? So let's see how active listening is related to the self and understanding of ourselves as we go ahead with this discussion. But before we do that, we will do what we always do, and that is to bring you in this present moment completely by chanting Om together. So let's just keep our glasses aside, spine straight, shoulders relaxed, completely relax your body. Let us for a moment forget about the world, forget about everything you've done before you entered this space. And let's give a little me time to ourselves because we so deserve it. We so need it. Let's dive right in. Please close your eyes, relax your shoulders. And take a nice deep breath in. We will chant Om 5 times together. I'll keep the count for you. You just stay with your breath. Just focus on your breathing. If your mind takes you here and there, come back to the third eye, to the center of your forehead as you keep your eyes closed. And when you exhale, you will chant Om. You inhale, and then as you exhale, you chant Om with the 3 syllables A, U, Ma. And if you're able to feel the vibrations as you say Ma, that's when you know you're doing it right. Okay, so let's give it a shot. Close your eyes, take a nice deep breath in. And breathe out. Let's breathe in and out a few times, and then we will start the chant together. Breathe in. And if it's possible, please chant out loud. If it's possible in your environment, please do that. Breathe in again. And breathe out. And with the next breath, we will start the chant. Om. 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 Shanti. 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 And slowly come back, rub your palms together. You can feel the warmth between them and gently place them on your eyes, and ears, and face, neck, and shoulders, and your entire body. And slowly open your eyes and come back. And as you come back, I would love to know how are you feeling and where are you joining me from today? Which part of the world are you in so that I can welcome you all to today's session on active listening, which is such an important trait to have as a leader and as a coach, extremely important to actively work on your ability to listen. Yeah, so let's start working on that together. But before that, let me know where are you joining me from. So give me the location in the comments. And if you also want to share how was this chant for you, absolutely go ahead and do that. Yeah, Bangalore, Indi, good to have you here. Fantastic. We just got back from a spiritual leadership retreat, by the way. Indiran was one of the leaders who were there with me, and I still am in that space, to be honest. It was just beautiful to disconnect from the world and create your own space. And that's what we experienced, truly magical. Yeah, Satyamurthy from Chennai, welcome, welcome, sir. Welcome to Leadership Satsang. And I'm really, really happy to see all you leaders joining in week after week. It shows your hunger to learn, and that's what encourages me to keep going week after week, episode after episode. And we've reached the 79th episode, and soon it'll be 100th, and then it's just a number, right? So let's keep going. Let's keep taking one step at a time. This entire month, if you notice, we have been talking about coaching as a skill for leaders. Right? The first week we talked about what are the different roles that a leader has to play. One of them is to be a coach. If you've missed out on that session or any other, the previous sessions of this month, please go back to those sessions. You will find them on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and definitely go through that, because coaching is a very, very important skill to develop for all of us as leaders. We do get to a point in our career where we are not dealing with first timers. We're not dealing with people who are, taking up their first job. You're dealing with mid-management or even senior management. And that's when we do more of coaching and mentoring than we need to do the being a manager or the taskmaster or even a counselor. So when you are leading senior executives, coaching becomes a very hands-on skill to have. So that's what we started our understanding with: when to be a coach, when not to be a coach, when should we mentor, when should we coach. And then we realized that if you have to look at a set of skills to develop, one important skill is the power of asking questions, power of powerful questions. And what makes questions powerful is if those questions are thought about in the moment. When you are in the presence of your coachee or your teammate who you're coaching, right? When you are completely with them is when you're able to ask powerful questions. What makes a question powerful? Other than the fact that it has to be an open-ended question, what makes it truly powerful is for you to ask the right question at the right time. And how will you be able to do that? By listening to your coachee actively. If you're not listening to them, then you will ask questions from here. But in coaching, your questions have to come from your heart, which means you need to connect with the coachee and be a part of their space. That you need to kind of meet the coachee where they are. That's a ground rule in coaching. So you meet the coachee where the coachee is, which means you sense how they're feeling. You kind of enter their world. And all this is not at all esoteric. It is very, very doable. All it takes is the intention to serve as a leader. It's the intention to listen carefully. And that's what I want to talk to you about. Right? Without learning how to listen actively, it is almost impossible to be effective as a leader and definitely as a coach. Right? So let's dive right in. There are 3 different levels of coaching, right? And every level or any level that you operate from can only be effective if you also move to higher levels of listening. Now, when it comes to listening, there are, in fact, 3 levels, right? Let me show you what these levels are. And I would like you to do a very honest, real-time assessment for yourself as we speak, okay? As I take you through the levels, I would like you to find yourself at one of these levels. Which level do you operate from most of the times? We all know how to indulge at all 3 levels, right? Now, the question is, at which level do you see yourself most of the times? So the first level is default listening. Now, what is default listening? Somebody's talking and you're listening. Like you can't help it. You're not like physically deaf. You're able to hear people. And that's what we call as listening. While you're doing something else, you're not at all paying attention to what's being said. you're just listening, and that's called as default listening, when you just hear what people have to say. The second level of listening is active listening, when you are engaged with the person you are listening to. And then there is an even higher level of listening, and that is dynamic listening. So default listening doesn't quite qualify as listening. You're just hearing what the person is saying. And most of the times we do this. Let's be honest. Right? Your mind is somewhere else. It is so difficult for us to concentrate on whatever we do because there are distractions around us all the time. And that's why there is so much resistance to meditate, because that's when you have, you kind of feel this performance pressure on you that, oh my God, now I'm supposed to pay attention. Now I'm supposed to be still. Forget it. There is too much going on in my head right now. I'll meditate later. Isn't it? And so we never do it. And what's funny and ironic is that by practicing meditation, you will be able to experience more of being in the present, right? And that's when we will probably, over a period of time, learn how to calm the thoughts down and how to be in the moment, which is a prerequisite to be a good listener, to be an active listener. So how do we move from default listening to active listening? Now, that's a question. That is what requires practice. And whatever we practice, we become good at it. Therefore, it's very important to know, what are you practicing, isn't it? And what you need to really practice when it comes to listening is how to be an active listener. Till such time you listen actively, you will never be able to come up with powerful questions. No matter what checklist I give you, what do's and don'ts I share with you, all of that is a function of being in that moment, listening actively, and then coming up with a question, right? You have no choice but to be in the present moment, be mindful when you are playing the role of a coach with your teams as a leader. So before we talk about improving our ability to listen, let us see where we are. What is the status quo? Which level of listening do you operate from most of the times? Let's have your response in the comments, please. Yeah, I hope I'm audible. Let's have the response in the comments. Is it level 1 or 2 or level 3? Which level do you operate from most of the times? Level 1, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that honesty. Loved it. Thank you. Thank you. If we don't know where we are, there is no way to get to where we want to be, isn't it? So it's very, very important that we realize, where do we operate from most of the times? Yes, Indir. And of course, you've now moved to active listening after practicing what I'm about to share. And I'm glad you know it already. And you are very actively being an active listener. And, this is a space where you will be work in progress forever, forever. Because every day is a new day, every moment is a new moment. And your mind is not always in the same state. And as it wavers, your ability to perform as a leader will also get impacted, right? So just because we know what active listening is, does not mean that we practice it all the time. So we have to be very mindful of whether we are practicing what we know or not. And if we don't know, you're about to know. That's what I'm going to share with you next, how to become an active listener. But knowing is not enough. Doing is what matters, right? So let's see how we are going to progress from being a default listener to becoming an active listener. And as you train yourself to become an active listener, you will then also experience dynamic listening, which means active listener plus a willing observer. That's what makes you a dynamic listener. Active listener means focusing on what the other person is saying and listening attentively, plus a willing observer, having the willingness to observe the person who's speaking so that whatever is not said is also understood. You understand what I'm saying? For example, if there is somebody you really care for or you know very well, and you just look at them and they're talking, they're trying to act normal, and you look at them and you say, you know what? You're not looking okay today. All okay with you? And that person says, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. And then you ask again, right? Doesn't look like. Something is wrong. What happened? Have you experienced that? Give me a yes in the chat, please. That yes, you have experienced this. You've had these, moments with somebody where they're saying something else, but you're hearing something else because you are also observing. You're not just going by the face value. You're not just listening to what is said. You're also observing the entire body language and feeling the energy of the person. And that is what helps you to listen to what is not even said. And sometimes that is what we need to hear. That is a connection we need to build with people who are a part of our inner circle, which includes people we work with. Because after all, we spend 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours with these people, 5 days a week, 6 days a week. How can they not be part of your inner circle, whether you like it or no? And in fact, if you accept it, it becomes much easier to enjoy these connections as long as they last. And if you move on to another organization and you choose to not stay in touch, that's perfectly fine. But when you build connections while you work together, it just becomes so much easier and more fun to create what you need to create for as long as you're there, isn't it? And one thing that will really, really help you to do that is to bring in the willingness to listen to what's not even being said. That is level 3 listening, dynamic listening, right? But we will get there only if we first practice active listening, because that's an important part of level 3 as well. So how do we become an active listener? I want you to remember this acronym FIGI that I came up with, I think about 5 years back. And since then, I have shared it with many, many people in many, many forums. And everybody has benefited from this immensely because it beautifully sums up the important things to be kept in mind to listen more actively. If you remember FIGI as an acronym, it's very unlikely for you to go back to level 1 default listening, right? So how do we become an active listener? We bring in the practice of following FIGI, where F stands for focus. Focus on the person who is speaking, which means giving full attention to that person and avoiding any distractions around you. For example, looking at the phone and listening is not listening. And you might say, no, Yukti, I can repeat whatever you have said. I was listening to you very carefully, and it is still not listening. Because when you're not even looking at the person, you are totally missing out on the cues that you can get through their body language. You're only just catching the words and tonality. A large part, if I may say 55% of the message which comes through body language is totally missed out because you don't even care to see. Another reason is that it's absolute lack of respect to be listening to somebody or pretending to listen when you don't even care to see that person, isn't it? How do you feel when someone listens to you like that? You're talking and the other person just looks somewhere else. I think we do that with our kids more often than anyone else because they don't know how to express how they feel about it. And I think at one point they probably get used to it. And so does it happen with even our subordinates, the junior staff. And they just think they don't have an option. This is how seniors are supposed to behave. Well, I absolutely beg to differ on that because no matter who it is, everyone deserves respect, whether it's your child or a junior staff, your subordinates or anybody, right? So the basic courtesy as a human and as a leader is for you to pay attention when somebody speaks by focusing on them and not getting distracted by other things. And if the distractions are unavoidable, and you might say that, these are not avoidable distractions, these are distractions I can't do much about, well, then have the courtesy to tell the person that, you know what, I want to listen to what you're saying, but right now, this is taking my attention. Can I come to you in 15 minutes? Can I speak to you at 3 o'clock? Can I connect with you tomorrow? Be that honest, be that respectful, and say so. Don't pretend to listen when you're not listening. That's the worst thing to do. The more you pretend, the better you get at it. Remember what I said. You will get better with what you practice. You're practicing being pretentious, you're going to get very good at it. So good that you can easily fool people at one point. They will not know whether you're listening or not, but you are actually not listening. So what are you gaining by putting in this effort? In my view, nothing at all. Right? So let us learn to focus on the person when a person is speaking to you. If it makes sense, give me MS in the comments right now. Does it make sense? And if it does, then you need to commit to focus. You need to commit to be that honest and respectful in your relationships, to be able to tell people whether you're listening or not, and not waste your time and effort in pretending to listen. Right? So if you commit, then say, I commit, because unless we work upon this, it's a waste of your time and my effort. Absolute waste, right? Why should I take you through something that has worked globally with anyone and everyone I've shared this with, only because they practiced? And if you're not committing to practice, then all of this will make no sense. It's just theory. Theory, when applied, is what becomes a technique. Theory is not a technique, okay? Theory can explain the technique to you. But technique comes into practice, and that's when it becomes powerful. That's what you would call as a powerful technique. And this, for sure, is a super powerful technique to be an active listener. So do you commit? Then let me see. I commit in the comments. Let's see. I commit, and then I will know that we are doing some good work together. Only then will it make sense for me to take you through the other 3 elements of active listening. And you can remember this with the acronym. So every single time you are with somebody, you've got to ensure that you pay attention, you're able to focus, and you're able to keep your distractions away. And after that, I will tell you what are the other 3 things to keep in mind. Wonderful. You commit. Fantastic. Others, tell me if you commit. Thank you, Indiran, for making that commitment. Yeah, Sachin, do you commit? Malti, Sachin, Satyamurthy, let's see all of you committing. Super, super, wonderful, wonderful, great. Yeah, Rashri, so good to have you here. Thank you for joining in. Do you commit to focus more? Maybe you already do, but you know what? Like I said, every moment is a new moment, a different moment, and we can never say that we are 100% in every moment unless we remind ourselves to do that and be there, right? So let this be a constant reminder, because for us to be able to practice active listening will require practice, which remains forever. It's an ongoing practice. All right, so that is F, focusing on the person. I stands for interest, showing interest in the other person using your body language. So when a person speaks, there is a lot of body language that comes to use, right? There are gestures, eye contact, facial expressions, and all of that comes together when people are talking. When you speak to somebody, it's like a package. It happens pretty much on its own. But when you are listening, that's when you can forget about your body language, and that you must not. Because if you use your body language even while listening, is when you're able to show interest in what the other person is saying. And that includes having an eye contact with the speaker, right? Having an open gesture and not sitting with your arms crossed, and having facial expressions to confirm that you are agreeing or understanding what's being said, like nodding, right? And a posture would also mean leaning forward and showing interest. Maybe you sit like this and you say, yeah, right? And then you confirm it to the speaker that you're with the speaker. Body language is not just used when you speak, it is also used when you listen. And that's when it becomes a two-way communication, not a monologue, right? It's not a one-sided communication. Communication can never be one-sided. Communication means a two-way conversation. And what makes it two-way is not when both are talking at the same time. It's when one speaks and the other is willing to listen. So is body language important when you listen? Absolutely, yes. Just as important as it is when you speak. So ensure that you create that eye contact, that you nod, that you smile, that you use facial expressions to confirm your understanding of what's being said. Your posture is open and straight, maybe leaning forward, showing interest to the person. That's when the person, the speaker, knows that you are with them and you are engaged in active listening. So we know that we need to focus, and we know that we must show interest. Now, the other two are things that we should avoid doing. And that's why I have marked them in red. And that's also very important. As much as it's important to know what to do, it's also important to know what not to do. So what should we not do? if we have to indulge in active listening, and that is to avoid judgment. To judge people for who we think they are, for what we think they might be about to say, that this is what they're about to say, this is what they might be thinking. And we already make those decisions in our head, so we don't care to listen. We think we already know. And if you already know, you must know for a fact that you're not listening. When you want to avoid judging people, you could do one of these three things. And this really, really helps for you to keep your slate clean, your mind clean from, any backlog that you're carrying. So one is to stay curious. Stay curious to know what this person is about to say. What is this conversation about? What is this sharing about? And that curiosity will help you to be more in the moment and not go back to your understanding of who this person is or who you think this person is or what they're about to say. Second is asking questions. Whenever you ask questions, you are more alert, obviously. Otherwise, you can't come up with those questions, right? So when somebody is talking and you think that you will lose focus and your mind might waver and might just kind of go elsewhere, you can bring in some questions to stay more engaged, more active. And those questions are obviously related to what's being shared with you. But when you ask those questions, it helps you to be more in the moment. So ask questions that can help you to continue staying focused in the conversation, listening actively, and yet not judging. And the third is backtracking. Now, what is backtracking? We do this all the time in professional coaching. Now, what happens is a person has shared something, and after you listen to what's being said, before you respond, forget about reacting. Of course, you shouldn't react. But even before you respond, you should repeat what is being said in your words, right? It's called paraphrasing or backtracking. Now, what that does is it confirms to the speaker that you were listening. And if you've not understood something too well, it's a great opportunity for them to correct you as well, right? So if I'm ever asked a question, and if you've been part of my tribe, you would notice me do this all the time. When you ask me a question, I will repeat the question in my words and get a confirmation from you that I've understood your question. And when you say, yes, that's what I'm asking, that is when I will make an attempt to answer your question. That's called as backtracking or paraphrasing. Now, when you do this, it is a great way for you to be sure that you've been paying attention and for the speaker to know that you have been attentive and you have been listening to what's being said, right? So this is what helps us to not judge, avoid judging the speaker. Are we crystal clear about this? Did you know how simple it can be to not judge? Only if we want. See, everything is about willingness. If you're willing to listen, then these tricks will work very well. If you're not willing to listen, which happens sometimes, it's by decision. We sometimes decide, I don't want to listen to this person. And if that's where we are, then none of this will work because we don't want anything to work. We don't want to listen. Then forget about active listening. But if you want to, if there is willingness, then judgment has to be out of your way. And I have given you 3 ways to do that. Are we crystal clear? Let me have CC in the chat. Are we crystal clear about how to keep the judgment away? Yeah? Yes, crystal clear, Indiran. Others, give me a CC very quickly. Tell me that we are crystal clear about the fact that we need to have a clean slate when we are talking to people, when we are listening to people. And there are multiple ways to do that. You could be more actively engaged in your listening by backtracking and asking questions. All right, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for your response. Let's now look at the last part of this technique of active listening, and that is another I to avoid. This is another something to avoid. And you know what this I stands for? Any guesses what this I stands for? The earlier I is what we must do. This is the I that we should not do. This is part of our don't. What is that? Let's see in the chat. I know some of you attended my session before, and I'm sure you know it. So what does this I stand for? Let's see if you know. What does it stand for? Or you can guess if you don't know. Something to avoid if we want to be an active listener. What is that? Let me give you some time to put it in the comments. Ignoring. Good guess, but no. This is the I that brings the I into the conversation all the time. No, Malti, it's not ignore. It is interruption. Don't we do that all the time? Before a person is able to complete their sentence, what do? We jump in. We jump in to complete it for them. And that could be a function of a lot of things. Maybe you run out of patience and the person is speaking too slow. Maybe you think that it is so repetitive, you already know what's being shared right now. So you complete the sentence for them. Sometimes you don't even care to complete the sentence. You will just jump in and give your response to a question which is not even asked fully. You just land up interrupting. And if that is your issue, then say I in the chat. That's I, which is you confirming and accepting that, yes, I interrupt. And yes, interruption is what takes away my ability to listen, even though I have an intention to do so. You see, if intention is not backed by action, that has very little value. Right? You can have the intention to do some great stuff, but if you don't take the necessary action, then what's the value? What's the point having that intention? Your intention is to listen carefully, but your action is to interrupt. So if you stop interrupting, is when the other person will feel more complete with their sharing. And that sense of completion in itself makes them feel more respected, more valued, and more engaged with you. So what do we need to do? We need to stop interrupting. And that is also a way to show respect. And the way to do that is to firstly allow the person to complete what they have to say, and then take a little pause before you start speaking. Let the person finish what they say. Don't immediately jump in. Let there be little silence, a little pause. And then you speak. Why? Because if you jump in immediately, it feels as if what was said was incomplete. The person who's sharing might feel incomplete. So let there be that little pause and let the person realize that they are done and they were fully heard. And then you share what you need to share. So let's look at this again. There are 3 levels of listening. The first level of default listening is something that you're not allowed to go back to, if I may say, right? Now that you have learned active listening, you're not allowed to go back to default listening. It's not done. It's not fair. It will not do justice to the knowledge you're taking away from this satsang session today, right? You've learned what is active listening, which means we are going to actively practice this. Practice focusing on the speaker, showing interest through our body language, and not judging or interrupting when they speak. And only then can we elevate ourselves to dynamic listening, where we are not just listening to what is said, but we are also willingly observing the body language and the overall energy of the person we are listening to. And that's when we can understand what is not even said. That is a real superpower of a leader. So I bless you all with this superpower. And as I hand this over to you, I request you to practice it. I request you to make it your real power by practicing it every single day in every single conversation, or to the extent possible. The more you practice, the better you get at it. With that, we conclude today's session because that's all the time we have. And I'm sure you know that next week is going to be an open session. It's an open house because it's the last Tuesday of the month, where I will be happy to take any questions that you may have. You need to come in and ask those questions live in the comments. And if you don't have a question, you should still attend the session, because when others ask, it can create a eureka moment for you. It can be a breakthrough. You just need to be there, and that's what it takes to take away something of real value. I hope to see you next week for another insight in the space of leadership and spirituality. Until then, please take on the comments of this event and do share with me, how did you find this satsang session? What are you taking away? And if there are any specific questions, hold on to them. I'm going to pick them up just in a week's time from now. So take very good care of yourself. Thank you once again for joining me live. I will see you real soon. God bless you all.